The thing about being Ryan Reynolds is that everyone expects you to be funny all the time. Like I'm some sort of comedy vending machine. Insert awkward situation, receive witty quip. And for the longest time, I was perfectly fine with that arrangement. Hell, I'd built an entire career on it. The sarcastic Canadian who could deflect any genuine emotion with a well-timed joke. It was my superpower, my shield, my entire personality wrapped up in a neat little package with a bow made of self-deprecating humor. But then, Blake Lively happened. Not in the way you'd expect, though. She didn't sweep into my life with orchestral music playing in the background. There were no slow-motion hair flips or strategic lighting. Instead, she showed up on a Tuesday, wearing jeans with a coffee stain on them, laughing at something on her phone while we waited for our Green Lantern costume fittings. Yes, that Green Lantern, the movie we don't talk about. Except I'm talking about it now because that cinematic disaster gave me the best thing in my life. I remember thinking she was too put together for someone about to spend 12 hours in a motion capture suit. Her laugh wasn't the polite kind you give when someone important is trying to be funny. It was real, unguarded, the kind that makes you scrunch up your nose and forget you're supposed to look attractive. She caught me staring, and instead of the awkward look-away dance most people do, she just raised an eyebrow and said, "Your shoe's untied, Reynolds." It wasn't, but I looked anyway. That should have been my first warning sign. Blake Lively was the kind of person who could make you question your own feet just by suggesting something might be wrong with them. She had this way of seeing through the performance, past the practiced responses and scripted interactions that had become my second nature. In Hollywood, we're all wearing masks, but she seemed to have X-ray vision for bullshit. We became friends first. The kind of friends who text each other terrible food photos at 2 a.m. from different time zones. She'd send me a picture of wilted streetcar pad thai from Bangkok where she was shooting, and I'd respond with a photo of a burrito that looked like it had already been digested once. It was stupid and perfect and completely devoid of any romantic tension. Or so I told myself while saving every single one of her messages. New York became our unofficial headquarters for bad decisions and good memories. Every time we were both in the city, we'd meet up at this hole-in-the-wall Vietnamese place in Chinatown that definitely violated several health codes but made pho that could resurrect the dead. She'd order for both of us in perfect Vietnamese, because of course she spoke Vietnamese, while I sat there pretending I knew what she was asking for. "You know she just ordered you chicken feet, right?" the waiter said to me once in perfect English. "I know," I lied, maintaining eye contact like my life depended on it. Blake laughed so hard she knocked over her entire glass of water, and somehow, sitting there with soggy napkins and chicken feet I'd never eat, I felt more like myself than I had in years. Not Ryan Reynolds, the actor, not the guy with the perfect comeback for everything, just Ryan, the guy who was terrible with chopsticks and accidentally called the waiter mom once when he wasn't paying attention.
The shift happened gradually, like gaining weight or losing hair. You don't notice it day by day until suddenly you're looking in the mirror wondering when everything changed. With Blake, it was a Tuesday night in October. New York was doing that thing where it couldn't decide if it wanted to be autumn or winter, so it chose violence and gave us both. Freezing rain with occasional sleet, the kind of weather that makes you question your life choices. She texted me at 11 p.m. "I found a new place, Korean BBQ, but the owner is convinced he's Gordon Ramsay. You need to see this." I should have said no. I had an early call time for a reshoot, my trainer had specifically told me not to eat red meat, and my publicist would have a stroke if photos surfaced of me stumbling out of a K-Town restaurant at 2 a.m. But Blake had this way of making terrible ideas sound like adventures you'd regret missing. The place was hidden between a massage parlor and a store that somehow sold both cell phone cases and live fish. No sign, just a piece of paper taped to the door with Korean characters that Blake assured me said restaurant, but could have said organ harvesting facility for all I knew. Inside, it was all smoke and sizzling meat and an owner who indeed screamed at his staff like he was auditioning for a cooking reality show. "This is perfect," Blake said, sliding into a booth with torn vinyl seats. "Look at this menu. Half of it's in Korean, half in English, and I'm pretty sure some of it's just drawings. She was wearing this oversized sweater that made her look like she'd raided a giant's closet, her hair pulled back in a messy bun that had given up on being a bun about 3 hours ago. No makeup, just exhaustion and enthusiasm in equal measure. She looked absolutely beautiful, and that thought hit me like a city bus. "You okay?" she asked, waving a hand in front of my face. "You're doing that thing where you zone out but try to look thoughtful." "I'm contemplating the drawing that might be beef or might be a small dog," I said, deflecting, as always. "It's octopus," she said confidently, then paused. "Or beef. Actually, let's just order it and find out." This was Blake's approach to everything. Jump first, figure out the landing on the way down. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely opposite to my approach, which involved overthinking everything until the opportunity passed and I could safely joke about missing it. The owner came over, took one look at us, and started shouting in Korean. Blake responded in kind, which led to what appeared to be a heated negotiation, but turned out to be a passionate discussion about marinades. 20 minutes later, our table was covered in small dishes containing things I couldn't identify and wasn't sure were legal. "Try this one," she said, holding out something that looked like it was still moving. "What is it? Does it matter? When did you become the kind of person who needs to know what they're eating?" She was right. When did I become so careful? Everything in my life was calculated, measured, tested with focus groups. Even my spontaneity was scheduled. But here, in this underground Korean restaurant that definitely wasn't up to code, with Blake challenging me to eat possible seafood or possible rubber, I realized I'd been playing it safe for so long. I'd forgotten what it felt like to just live. I ate the thing. It was octopus, or beef. Honestly, it could have been tire rubber marinated in soy sauce, but Blake smiled when I swallowed it, and suddenly it was the best thing I had ever eaten. "See," she said, "you're still alive. Probably." We stayed until 3 a.m. when the owner finally kicked us out, but not before giving Blake a hug and what seemed to be his personal cell phone number. The rain had turned to snow while we were inside, covering New York in that brief moment of perfection before it all turns to gray slush. We stood on the sidewalk, neither of us making a move toward getting a cab. "I should tell you something," Blake said, pulling her sweater tighter around herself. "I'm seeing someone." The words hung in the air like frozen breath. Of course she was. Blake Lively doesn't stay single. She's the kind of person people write sonnets about, or at least lengthy Instagram captions. "That's great," I said, and meant it, mostly. "Anyone I know?" "No, he's normal. Works in finance, has a 401k and everything. Sends good morning texts with the proper amount of emojis. The proper amount being 1. 2 maximum, never the eggplant." We both laughed, but there was something underneath it. A recognition of paths diverging, maybe. Or just two friends standing in the snow, pretending everything was exactly as it should be.
6 months passed. Blake's finance guy turned into Blake's ex-finance guy after he suggested she should consider more age-appropriate roles. She texted me the news while I was in the middle of shooting a scene where I had to cry on cue. The tears came easily that day. "He said I should think about playing moms now," her text read. "I'm 24. "Send him a photo of Betty White in a bikini," I replied. "Tell him it's his mom." "Already blocked him, but I like your idea better." We fell back into our rhythm, but something had shifted. Every joke felt loaded. Every accidental touch lasted a beat too long. I started noticing things I had no business noticing. How she always ordered her coffee at exactly 140 degrees. How she couldn't watch scary movies but loved true crime podcasts. How she hummed Fleetwood Mac when she was anxious. Then came the night that changed everything. It was another New York evening, but this time she wanted to try Ethiopian food in Hell's Kitchen. The place was fancy, the kind where they explain each dish like it's a piece of art, and the bathroom has cloth towels. I'd worn an actual suit jacket. She'd worn a dress that made me walk into a doorframe. "You clean up nice, Reynolds," she said, and I tried not to preen like a teenager who'd just been noticed by the popular girl. Dinner was perfect. Too perfect. The conversation flowed without our usual interruptions of showing each other memes or rating other people's food choices. We were on our best behavior, and it was horrible. This wasn't us. We were messy Vietnamese pho and questionable Korean BBQ, not whatever this was. "This is weird." "Right," Blake said finally, putting down her fork. "We're being weird." "So weird," I agreed, relief flooding through me. "Want to get out of here and find the worst pizza in Manhattan?" "God, yes!" We paid the check, she insisted on splitting it, as always, and escaped into the night. 3 blocks away, we found a pizza place that looked like it had survived solely on the business of drunk college kids and people with no other options. Perfect. "2 slices of whatever won't kill us," Blake told the guy behind the counter, who looked personally offended by the request. We ate standing up, grease dripping onto the sidewalk, and it was the best meal we'd had all night. Blake had sauce on her chin and didn't care. I had cheese in my beard and cared even less. This was us. This was right. "I have a confession," Blake said, dabbing at her face with a napkin that disintegrated on contact. "I didn't want to go to that fancy place. I thought that's what you'd want. Something sophisticated." "Ryan, I ate a hot dog I found in my pocket. From the previous day. Sophisticated isn't really my thing." "It was in your pocket?" "Wrapped in a napkin. I'm not an animal." She laughed, that real laugh that made her whole face scrunch up. And I knew I was gone. Completely. Utterly gone. This wasn't just attraction or friendship or any of the neat categories I'd tried to file it under. This was the kind of feeling that rewrites your entire life, that makes you reconsider every decision that didn't lead you directly to this moment. Standing outside a terrible pizza place with grease on your shirt and your heart trying to escape through your chest. "Ryan," she started, and I knew what was coming. The "we're better as friends" speech. The "I don't want to ruin what we have" conversation. I'd given it myself enough times to recognize the wind-up. "I know," I said, cutting her off. "We're friends. Best friends. And that's—" She kissed me. Right there, with pizza breath and sriracha on her lips, from the hot sauce she had inexplicably added to her slice. It wasn't a movie kiss, no swelling music, no perfect lighting. A taxi honked, someone yelled at us to move. I'm pretty sure a pigeon pooped near my foot. It was absolutely perfect. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "You were about to give me the friend speech, weren't you?" "I was building up to it. Had a whole thing about preserving what we have, maybe a metaphor about pizza." "Your metaphors are terrible. The worst." "I want to try this," she said, suddenly serious. "Us. But I need you to know something. I don't want the Ryan Reynolds show. I don't want the guy who has a joke for everything and never lets anyone see him sweat. I want the guy who ate pocket hot dogs and pretends to understand Korean menus. Can you do that?"
Enjoying the story? Hit the like button, subscribe, drop your comment, and turn on the notifications. Let's keep going.
The answer, it turned out, was complicated. Old habits die hard, and mine had been reinforced by years of positive feedback. Make a joke, get a laugh. Avoid the uncomfortable moment. It was like breathing, if breathing was a defense mechanism developed by a kid who moved schools too much and learned that being funny meant you didn't get stuffed in lockers. Our first real date, after the pizza kiss, after admitting this was something, I planned everything perfectly. Restaurant reservations at a place that had a waiting list longer than most government documents. Tickets to a show everyone was talking about. A rooftop bar for drinks after. The kind that charges $30 for cocktails with names like Midnight in Montenegro. Blake showed up to my apartment to pick me up. She insisted on being the one to pick me up, something about gender norms and making me feel pretty, and took one look at my outfit. "You're wearing a suit," she said. Not a question. "It's a nice restaurant." "You hate suits. You once told me wearing a suit feels like being slowly strangled by fabric society." That does sound like something I'd say. She walked past me into my apartment, straight to my bedroom. I followed as she opened my closet and started pulling things out. Jeans that had seen better decades, a t-shirt from a band that broke up before we were born, the leather jacket I'd bought on impulse and worn exactly twice. "Put these on," she said, tossing them at me. "Blake, we have reservations." "Cancel them. They'll blacklist me. Then we'll eat somewhere that doesn't have a blacklist. Possibly somewhere that doesn't even have a regular list." I wanted to argue, to stick to the plan, to do the impressive thing, but she was standing there in my bedroom, holding my clothes, looking at me like she was daring me to disappoint her. So I changed. We ended up at a food truck in Brooklyn that supposedly made the best tacos in the city, according to Blake's hairdresser's cousin. The line was 45 minutes long. It started raining halfway through, and we ate standing up under a bodega awning while the owner's cat tried to steal our food. "Better?" Blake asked, agua fresca dripping down her hand. "Getting there," I admitted. But I wasn't, not really. Even as we stood there, soaking wet and fighting a cat for carnitas, I was performing, being the cool guy who didn't care about his ruined plans, the spontaneous boyfriend who rolled with the punches. I had simply switched from one act to another. Blake knew. She always knew. It came to a head 3 weeks later. She was having a rough day. A director had told her she was too tall for a part, which is the kind of critique that makes you want to burn Hollywood to the ground and salt the earth. She came over to my place, exhausted and frustrated, and I immediately went into entertainment mode. "You know what we should do?" I said before she'd even taken off her coat. "We should make a video response. I'll be the director, but like tiny. We'll use forced perspective. I'll stand on a box and tell you you're too short. It'll be hilarious. We could probably get millions of views and—" "Stop." The word was quiet, but it hit like a sledgehammer. "Just stop," she said again, sinking onto my couch. "I don't need you to make this funny. I don't need you to fix it or spin it or turn it into content. I just need you to sit here with me and let it be shitty for a minute." I stood there, frozen, hand still gesturing toward my imaginary camera setup. This was what she'd been talking about. The performance. The constant need to deflect, to entertain, to be anything other than vulnerable. I sat down next to her, close but not touching. And for the first time in maybe ever, I didn't say anything. We sat in silence for 5 minutes. 10. At 15 minutes, she leaned against my shoulder. "This is hard for you," she said, not a question. I'm literally biting my tongue. I have 17 jokes and one pretty solid rant about height discrimination in Hollywood. Save them for later. Right now, just be. So I was. We sat there for an hour, maybe more. No jokes, no performance, no deflection. Just two people existing in the same space, one having a bad day, the other learning how to let that be okay. At some point, she started talking about the role, about feeling too tall since middle school, about dreams that seem to require you to be someone entirely else. I listened, actually listened, instead of waiting for my turn to be clever. "You know what the stupid part is?" she said eventually. "I don't even want the part that much. It's just the principle. Like, reject me for my acting, not my skeleton." "Your skeleton is lovely," I said, then caught myself. Sorry, that was... "No," she laughed, a small but real laugh. "That was perfect timing. You lasted 90 minutes. I'm impressed." It nearly killed me. "I know. I watched you almost explode several times. Your eye was twitching." She turned to face me fully, cross-legged on the couch like we were kids sharing secrets. "Here's the thing, Reynolds. I fell for the funny guy, the one who makes me laugh until my stomach hurts and can turn any disaster into an adventure. I don't want you to stop being that person, but I also want the person underneath that, the one who gets scared and sad and doesn't know what to say. Can you give me both?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Not the knee-jerk, "of course," that would have been easy to say, but the real consideration of what she was asking. To be both the shield and what it was protecting. To trust someone enough to lower the drawbridge. "I can try," I said, and for once I meant exactly what I said. No subtext, no deflection, no safety net of sarcasm. But you have to promise to call me out when I'm hiding. Oh, I will. Loudly. Probably in public. Good. She kissed me then, soft and sure, and I felt something shift into place. Not perfect. I'd still make too many jokes when things got serious, and she'd still have to remind me that not everything needed a punchline. But perfect wasn't the point. Real was the point. And this, us, whatever we were building, this was real.
Blake and I got married 3 years later. Not in some fancy ceremony with celebrities and magazine deals, but in a barn in South Carolina that her grandmother had somehow convinced us was rustic chic, but was actually just a barn. A bat flew through during the vows. My best man, who shall remain nameless but rhymes with Schmake Schmeilenhall, forgot the rings and tried to fashion replacements out of napkin rings. Blake's dress got caught on a nail and ripped right before she walked down the aisle, so she safety pinned it and added a belt, declaring it intentionally deconstructed. It was a disaster. It was perfect. That's the thing I learned about love, real love, the kind that lasts through 3 kids and career changes and that period where I thought I could pull off a man bun. It's not about the perfect moments. It's not about always having the right words or the grand gestures or the flawless execution. It's about finding someone who sees through your carefully constructed armor and loves both the knight and the scared kid inside it. Blake still calls me out when I'm deflecting. Just last week, when our daughter asked me why the sky was blue and I launched into a comedy routine about colorblind aliens, Blake gave me that look. The one that says, "Answer the actual question, Reynolds." So I did. Explained light scattering and wavelengths while our 4-year-old nodded seriously and then asked if we could scatter chicken nuggets instead. The jokes are still there. They always will be, but now they're punctuation, not the whole sentence. They're the seasoning, not the entire meal. And in between the laughter, there's silence that doesn't need filling. There's vulnerability that doesn't need deflecting. There's love that doesn't need a punchline. Sometimes people ask me when I knew Blake was the one. They expect some grand romantic story, a moment of crystalline clarity, but the truth is simpler and more complicated than that. I knew she was the one when she made me want to be more than the show. When being myself, the real, unfiltered, occasionally boring self, became more important than being entertaining. She saw through my jokes not because she didn't appreciate them, but because she knew they weren't all I had to offer. She loved the performer, but fell for the person. And in doing so, she gave me permission to do the same. That night at the pizza place, grease-stained and genuine, she asked if I could give her the real Ryan Reynolds. The truth is, I'm still figuring out who that is, but I'm doing it with her, one bad food choice and terrible joke at a time. And maybe that's what love really is, not finding someone who completes you, but finding someone who makes you want to complete yourself. Although if Blake asks, love is definitely letting her have the last slice of pizza, even when she's already had 3. And she adds hot sauce to it, because she's a monster. A beautiful, perfect monster who saw through my jokes and loved me anyway. And that is when everything changed. Not with fireworks or orchestras or perfectly scripted moments, but with pizza breath and a promise to try, to be real, to be both the joke and the person telling it, the armor and what it protects, the performance and the heart beating underneath it all. Blake didn't just see through my jokes, she saw through to me. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. It's still enough. Even when she puts pineapple on pizza, which should be illegal in all 50 states and most territories. But I'll defend her right to do it because that's what love is. Standing by someone even when they're fundamentally wrong about pizza toppings. And that, more than anything, is how I know this is real.
If you watched until here, thank you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love reading your messages. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you never miss another story like this. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. Any amount helps a lot. Link in the pinned comment.